Hey, good afternoon to you. 306 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Congressman Pat Fallon of Texas joins us. He was in that meeting this morning right here on Capitol Hill with President Trump as he met with members of Congress. Congressman Fallon will report on the details from inside of that room. Sean Carney is here at 4 o'clock. He's the president, CEO of 40 Days for Life. We'll talk to him about a big Supreme Court decision today regarding the so-called abortion pill. John Lott is here at 5 o'clock. The left telling all sorts of lies about crime statistics this week. John Lott will cut through that. And Kyle Seraphin is here at 5:30, the former FBI agent. Will talk to us about Congress's decision to hold the Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Breaking news as we speak, Joe Biden overseas at the G7 in Italy, where all the member countries have announced yet another tranche of tens of billions of dollars of money headed to Ukraine. Vladimir Zelensky is standing alongside Joe Biden at this very moment, the two of them doing a press conference together. Joe Biden has been wandering from event to event today. A lot of footage coming out showing him wandering away from the other world leaders. The Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni having to grab him and bring him back. He seems as aimless as ever, unfortunately, and he's not representing us well overseas. Here he is just moments ago setting up how the reporters would conduct the questions. And I'll let you hear the back and forth with the Associated Press reporter, who instantly starts tossing softballs at him about how, Hunter Biden was convicted this week, she says, but you're going through something so many American families go through, she says, in the most sympathetic possible setup you could possibly have for a question like this. Take a listen.
Now what we'll do is you're going to take two questions from American reporters and a question each from two American reporters and a question each from two Ukrainian reporters. The first person I'm to call on is Colleen Long of the Associated Press.
They walk the microphone over to her.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. President. About 2 weeks ago, you changed course to allow Ukraine to fire U.S. weapons into Russia. Given the reported successes, would you consider further expanding the parameters on U.S. weapons into Russia, even despite your concerns about escalation? And on the news from home, you're going through something.
A push by the press here for more attacks on inland Russia.
That so many American families go through the intersection of addiction and the criminal justice system, but you're not like most families. Was your son able to get a fair trial? Do you believe the Justice Department operated independently of politics? And for President...
Let me answer your question and you ask his question, okay?
Okay, so we'll get to his answer in a moment. But listen to the setup here. So the Associated Press reporter, do you think your family was treated fairly? Did the justice system treat you fairly? The one that he controls, the one that's doing his bidding, the one that's trying to crush his political opponents, arresting all of his political opponents, whether it's pro-life people who are singing church hymns outside of abortion mills, or January 6 protesters who, to this very day, are being arrested by the FBI's National Security Division, or President Trump himself, the guy who's been hit with so many charges, both at the federal and the state levels, all led by out-of-control Democrat prosecutors doing the bidding of the Biden administration. Was your family able to get a fair trial? How you holding up? Has there ever been a question like this put to Trump by the Associated Press? Has any AP reporter ever asked some version of this? Do you think this is fair, what they're doing to you? Tell us. But Joe Biden, the inversion of the world that's being created by our media. Are you being treated unfairly here? Here's Joe Biden's attempt at an answer.
With regard to the first question, it is clear that the near abroad, meaning just across the line of the border with Russia and Ukraine, that it makes a lot of sense for Ukraine to be able to take out or combat what is coming across that border. In terms of long-range weapons, longer-range weapons into the interior of Russia, we have not changed our position on that sort. With regard to the question regarding the family, I'm extremely proud of my son Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know.
Brightest man I know. He's made me so much money.
And I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision. And I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Okay, what? First of all, she didn't even ask about the pardoning thing, although it has been asked a couple times. He told David Muir last week, I'm not pardoning him. Although Corinne was asked yesterday, are you going to give the guy a commutation? Are you going to basically zero consequences for Hunter? Are you going to get rid of any potential sentence? Corinne says, well, we haven't really discussed it. I haven't brought it up with Biden, so I can't really answer that question. That was her position yesterday. Now, that flies directly in the face of claims that she made, I believe, in September of last year, because she was asked explicitly whether or not there would be a commutation or pardon, and she said absolutely not, no, there will not be. But here's Corinne yesterday on commutations for Hunter.
I have not spoken to the president about this, and what I'm saying is he was asked about a pardon. He was asked about the trial specifically, and he answered it very clearly, very forthright. As we know, the sentencing hasn't even been scheduled yet. I don't have anything beyond what the president said.
Don't have anything beyond what the president said. All right, so there you go. So that's so Biden continuing to try and survive a press conference, a very rare press conference where he's taking a couple questions. But again, this is a scripted ordeal. This is a 2+2, right? So we get only 2 American reporters as Biden he just wasn't able to explain it. 2 American reporters, 2 Ukrainian reporters asking questions of both of these men on stage. And, you can be sure that the White House alerted the American reporters in question ahead of time that they'd be calling on them specifically and probably discussed what topics they would be addressing with them. And so Biden has the list in front of him, and he knows it's only 2 people he's got to call on. It's only 2, not a heavy lift, but he's got the list in front of him. He has to read directly from it and then call upon the reporter that the White House has screened ahead of time to ask these questions. And then you get softballs like, how you holding up? That's the best they could summon for the Hunter Biden saga. Amazing. Meanwhile, the opponent here, President Trump, is on Capitol Hill today. He's meeting with House Republicans, Senate Republicans, rallying the troops. You're hearing a lot of words from these guys saying that the Republican Party is very unified. At least they're presenting a public face of being unified. There's plenty of divisions, of course, within the Republican Party on Capitol Hill, but President Trump able to bring them all together. And there's already been a number of conflicting stories about what President Trump said to these members of Congress this morning. There's a claim going around some corners of the media that President Trump said mean things about the city of Milwaukee, and then where they're hosting the convention, by the way, the Republican convention. Republican members of Congress have been coming out saying, no, this is fake news. He's been critical of concerns about voter fraud and crime in Milwaukee, which is also a sentiment that people in Milwaukee share. They're concerned about that very thing. So we'll hear from Congressman Pat Fallon coming up. He can clear up all of these claims that the media are making today about what was said behind closed doors. President Trump also addressing the public, talking about the unity of the Republican Party, how we have to get control of our borders, get control of all of this crime. Apparently, among the things that were presented to President Trump today by way of a birthday gift, you should know that tomorrow is President Trump's birthday. It's Flag Day. I always remember that. It also helps that it's my brother's birthday, so it makes it very easy for me to remember all of those things. June 14th, tomorrow. So they presented him with one of the game-winning ball from last night's congressional baseball game, as well as a baseball bat. They gave him a bat and a ball today. The Republicans won that game, at least as of this hour. They're up 31-11. We'll see when the mail-in runs come in what the actual score is when the final tally is counted on January 6th. But right now, 31-11, the Republicans beat the Democrats easily last night. I went to the game. Corey and Ganamort was there with me at the game. Larry O'Connor was at the game. We got to witness all of this. And one of the things I walked away with is I don't think members of Congress know how to catch a baseball. That these innings stretched on. The reason the score is so high is because nobody can catch an out. You'd watch these fly balls go up in the air, and And you knew as soon as these shots went up, there's like, well, there's no chance. these guys were falling over, tripping over their own legs, running into one another. It was hilarious, honestly. But the game went up to 31-11 last night. Some of the in-game entertainment, including lefties running onto the field. Out in left field, you had this. You had these climate protesters all jump out of the stands, and they're trying to sprint onto the field, I guess. The best part is it was a young man with like moppy, floppy hair who was the first over the wall. And because there were so many members of Congress, including members of leadership there, Steve Scalise, for instance, among them, there were Capitol Police officers everywhere. They were lining the field, and some of them had long guns. You don't usually go to a baseball game and see a guy holding a rifle standing on the field, but that's what you had last night, which was pretty awesome. And this floppy-haired dude, skinny dude, jumps onto the field right at the corner of the outfield. He makes it maybe 4 steps before he gets an aerial tackle from one of these cops. It's perfect form. The guy, he led with his shoulder. He had his head up, head in front of the subject, and absolutely crushed him and drove him into the warning track. My guess is that he was probably mixing dirt with blood at the end of that. And meanwhile, so the other idiots who all start jumping down, they have their climate shirts on, and they jump into the field. None of them want to run at that point. They decide that they almost want to surrender instantly because they all saw the first tackle. They're not interested in sprinting onto the field. So they barely made an effort to actually run anywhere. They kind of half skipped until they were taken down. And not all the cops were of similar capability. There was a lady cop who tried to take one of these guys down. She grabbed the dude's wrist, and she was trying to hold on to him, and she fell over herself. So we got to work on that. But I do wonder how amped up these guys must have been, because they knew ahead of time. This is not the first time this has occurred. The climate people try and disrupt this congressional baseball game, don't they, Corey? On a routine basis, almost every year now, they announce it in advance. We're going to be disrupting. And then they show up and they're wearing their climate T-shirts, so they're the obvious suspects. And then they jump onto the field. And these cops, there's lots of crime in D.C. that's not predictable. This one was. So these guys were they were, I think, super jacked up. They were just having a great time tackling protesters. And the Capitol Police claimed last night that these guys would all be charged with federal crimes for having done this, interfering with, I think the crime was interfering with a Capitol Police officer. And so there's that. Although it's not really up to the Capitol Police, is it? In the end, whether or not these guys are prosecuted. It's up to these idiot prosecutors in D.C. who never prosecute lefties. If it's a Democrat committing a crime, you're fine. So we'll see what happens with these guys. But they all jumped on the field. They got tackled. They made for some good entertainment for the rest of us. All the Republicans were chanting USA, USA during all of this. Oh, and not to be left out, the pro-terror squad was on the opposite side of the outfield. And when all of the climate people were tackled, they all took out their Palestinian flags and started raising them up in the air. I think they were doing Chewbacca calls or something. And then, of course, the USA chants got up and running. And then stadium security, I think stadium security cleared out the pro-Hamas group, which was, and they were at various parts of the stadium, too. When I was walking into the stadium last night, I was coming in the first inning, and there were pro-Hamas people standing outside, a group of about a dozen of them. And they were all screaming at the top of their lungs at the stadium. They were screaming at the walls of the stadium. They were standing on the outside. They didn't want to buy tickets, I guess. And they're just screaming. And it was the kind of screaming that you realize you're like, that girl's not going to have her voice tomorrow. Like that, it's gone. She's going to be out of commission for a week. There's no chance she can sustain this. They're just all the freaking out going on outside the stadium. It was hilarious, honestly. And so a good time was had by all, except for the miserable people, of course. And it was great. I was standing with Corey and Larry. We were chatting amongst ourselves at the stadium, and sure enough, we were at the fine people of Hillsdale who welcomed us. They invited us to come and hang out with them. And all of a sudden, the crowd goes up into a huge uproar. And I knew it wasn't because of baseball play. There was nothing that interesting happening on the field. So I go sprinting up to, what is going on? And it's climate protesters being tackled. I was rewarded with that sight. So it was a good night, right, Corey? Yeah, we had a good time. Corey had a great time. It was a lot of fun. And Republicans won 31-11. Hopefully that's an omen. Hopefully that's a sign of what's to come Not, you know, Republicans have been winning. They have, right? The past few years they've been winning this congressional baseball game. Not doing so well in these elections. Hopefully they have a change of fate here. Bill in Fredericksburg, line 1. Bill, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, thank you so much for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
My friend, I listen to you and Chris Plant every day. Look, buddy, there's a strategy we need to formulate here. I've been hearing, the conservatives, Republicans saying, oh, Biden's not fit to be president. Okay, yeah, we know that. Oh, he can't be on the ballot. And now the Democrats are saying it. No. We want Joe on the ballot in November. We want him going against Trump. We realize he's not fit to be president, but we want him on the ballot. I just want to make that clear to everyone.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I know. To the extent that we talk about this subject at all, it's that the Democrats keep champing at the bit to replace him. And the likeliness that could occur, definitely a subject of conversation. But I don't know many conservatives, Republicans who think that, oh, boy, I wish it was someone else. I think we're right there with you, Bill. Yeah, go ahead. Leave his name on the ballot. The guy, New Low Joe. Nobody really likes this guy, do they, Bill?
No, not at all. Thank you, buddy, for taking the call.
Thank you very much. It's the great Bill from Fredericksburg. All right, hold on. Ahead on the program, we got Congressman Pat Fallon. He was with President Trump this morning. He'll give us an inside-the-room report of what really happened when the King of the Hill stopped by. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 3:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, Sean Carney will be with us at 4 o'clock, CEO of 40 Days for Life. We'll talk about a big Supreme Court decision today involving the so-called abortion pill. John Lott is with us at 5 o'clock. We talk crime data with him, the left telling a lot of lies this week. They say crime is way down. Oh, the FBI says crime is down. We'll explore what that really means. John Lott knows the details. And then Kyle Seraphin is here, a former FBI agent. He'll react to Merrick Garland being held in contempt of Congress and then saying he can't be prosecuted. He's above the law. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump stopped by Capitol Hill today to meet with members of Congress, the House, the Senate. Here he is today at the Capitol Hill Club, Republican hangout.
Great meeting. There's tremendous unity in the Republican Party. We want to see borders. We want to see strong military. We want to see money not wasted all over the world. We don't want to see Russian ships right off the coast of Florida, which is what they are right now. That's unthinkable. We want to see just success for our country. And we don't have success right now. We have inflation that's killing everybody. We have levels of inflation that nobody's seen for, they say 42 years, they say 53 years, and they say 75 years. I would say probably all of them are wrong. Probably we've never seen levels like this before. And we're going to end that. We're going to bring back our jobs. We're going to bring back common sense to government. We're going to have strong borders, and we're going to have people come into our country, but they're going to come in legally. They're not going to pour in from prisons all over South America and all over the world. And it's not just South America, by the way. It's all over the world. And we're not going to have them pour in from mental institutions, which is where they're coming from, large numbers, and large numbers are terrorists. And we're not going to have this.
We're not going to have this. Big meetings today with lawmakers. Let's find out how that meeting went. Joining us now is Congressman Pat Fallon. He represents Texas, his 4th Congressional District, and a member of the House Oversight Committee. Sir, good to have you back with us. Thank you.
Well, Vince, just for the record, I was there for the entire 1 hour and 45-minute conversation with President Trump. CNN was not in the room, and their reports of what happened inside were, not surprisingly, wildly inaccurate.
There's a claim by some reporters today that Donald Trump said something mean about the city of Milwaukee. Can you untangle that for us?
Wow. I mean, he was talking about, we only mentioned Milwaukee for a brief moment, talking about, that's where we're going to have our convention, and that they have some issues with voter integrity, which doesn't surprise me at all. A lot of major cities run by Democrats have problems with voter integrity. So it wasn't anything. It was something that was a forgettable line, to be honest.
Got it. So what else happened in that room? Give me a sense of the way members of Congress reacted to the president being there, and what message he delivered.
Okay, so to be clear, it was a political meeting with the Republican conference and the president. It was very well attended, and I would say if not it's hard to get all 220 of us at anything, but they were very close to everybody was there. There was a lot of unity. He got probably 7 or more standing ovations. They were all genuine, and it was a great meeting. I very much enjoyed it.
So a lot of positive reaction. What did he say to the members?
Well, I think it was just in general, and I'll get into some specifics. It was policy rich, and there was a substantive conversation, and he actually took questions too. No holds barred. Any questions were asked. He talked about just his priorities, and part of it was in your clip there about, we've got to get a hold on the border. We've got to project strength on the world stage. He was very proud of the fact that his administration cut more regulations than any in history. The fact that he made a joke about we had a 1-seat majority. He said to Mike Johnson, he said to the speaker, well, now you have a 2-seat majority, so now you can be really brutal. And it was a joke, obviously, because we have a razor-thin majority. So the left always takes things out of context. But, talked about we need to save the country. And in order to do that, we need to be unified. We need him to win. Yeah. We need to hold the House, expand our majority, in fact, and then we need to take the Senate. And we need those 3 things. He went over poll numbers. He talked about helping members of Congress, and he is committed to helping 100 members of Congress or viable candidates in open seats or seats that we can beat Democrats in. That is an incredible commitment from somebody that he himself is running for office.
I heard something about
because he is a team player.
I heard something today about tele-town halls that he would be doing to these virtual town halls basically for all 100 of these members. Yeah,
and we do them ourselves, and it's great outreach. You get sometimes, just as a sitting member of Congress in our own district, thousands of people on the call at once, and a lot of them stay on for 20 and 30 minutes. And there's no other way that you can do that. Mm-hmm. If I have a town hall, which I've had scores of, I don't know, maybe close to 100 in-person town halls over the last 3.5 years I've been in Congress, at best we get 300 people at one. But to have 3,000 or 4,000, and can you imagine with the technology that President Trump is talking about, talking to across a state hundreds of thousands of people at once, and to take questions and to have them be a part of the process. That's why he won in 2016, and that's why I think he's going to win in 2024.
I also understand there was some conversation about states that are now in play that maybe you previously wouldn't have thought to be in play. For instance, Virginia, a couple of recent polls show that Virginia is tied. Was the president speaking about those states and his likeliness of winning them?
He did talk about Minnesota, that we're doing well and we're competitive. He's going to make a play for New York and New Jersey. And even though those are heavy lifts, as I think we'd all agree, if the Democrats have to spend time and money in those states, that's less time and money they're going to be spending in Wisconsin or Michigan or a Pennsylvania or a North Carolina, et cetera. Yeah. And he is. There's been a few polls. In fact, he'd said some polls that he'd been made aware of that maybe he was up 1 or 2 points, and most of them he had acknowledged that he was tied. But if he wins Virginia, you can go to bed that night knowing he's president of the United States. You know what I'm saying, Vince?
Right.
Because they always go east to west. There are certain states, like if he's competitive in New Hampshire, which he was very much so in 2016, it's going to be a long night for Democrats. If conversely, when they call Florida for Obama, you can go to bed because the Republican candidate's not going to win. And if Virginia truly becomes, it's competitive now if it stays that way. And there's a long way for, people who aren't going to start voting for 4 months. If that's the case and Democrats have to expend that kind of energy, they're defending a state that we didn't come close to in the last couple of cycles. So that would be a great thing. In Minnesota, apparently we haven't won, a Republican hasn't won Minnesota, the president said, since like 1952.
Wow.
And because, when we had those landslides like Nixon, I thought maybe it was 72. I think Nixon, I think did get Minnesota in 72. But Mondale won it in 84. So anyway, it's been a very long time that we put that in the Republican column.
There's a piece this week in The Federalist. The headline is "Ignore the Polls. Republicans have a major voter turnout problem." And they emphasize some of the hopefulness ahead of, for instance, the 2020 election and especially ahead of those 2022 midterms. Republicans underperformed expectations in those cycles. Do you get the sense that the people in that room, to include President Trump, are concerned about this? Because the polls, yes, do look really good right now. There's all sorts of tailwinds in terms of demographic shifts that are really helping Republicans, and in particular President Trump. But what of turnout and voter registration? How important is that to the conversation today?
Yeah, I love the way the left spins things. So let's talk about Vince 2022 for a minute, if we could. In 2022, 3 million more people voted for a Republican candidate for Congress than they did Democrats. That's not a voter turnout problem. We whooped them, and we whooped them good in 2022. The problem was they're very good at gerrymandering. And so there's some, and so I looked something up because we lost a lot of close races in 2022. We won a few, but we lost far more. There were 25 seats that we lost by less than 3%. Do you think about that when you talk about waves? I think honestly, had it not been for the Roe v. Wade decision that came out that summer, we would have picked up the majority of those 25 seats. So it would have been an absolute red wave. So, and there were red waves. There were minor ones though. There were red wave in New York. There was a red wave in Florida. But the Democrats hung their hat on and spent hundreds of millions of dollars on the abortion issue because they were using their scare tactics and such. Roe v. Wade was rightfully overturned because it is clearly a states' rights issue. What the Supreme Court decided in, 1972 or 73 with Roe v. Wade was completely unconstitutional. And this Supreme Court just set it back on its constitutional axis. It is up to each state, and each state will determine it. That's all. And that's what the president was talking about, was he thought from a political standpoint, and I agree with him incidentally, that I personally am pro-life with exceptions, just like President Reagan. Life of the mother, rape, incest. President Reagan, that was his belief, and it's always been mine. It's President Trump's. And he was saying, like, you have to, and he did say, you have to use your own moral compass. He didn't say tell anybody to do something that they didn't want to do. He said, use your own moral compass. This is where I am at. This is, I think, politically, to take this issue away from them, you let the states decide. Kansas and Ohio decided differently than, say, Texas has thus far. And that, I do think, is wise politically moving forward.
Right, but this issue of turnout still is important. I mean, as many explanations as there may be for the outcome in 2022, you've got a situation here where you've got a lot of people who are not yet registered to vote who are telling pollsters that they're inclined to support Trump. Well, that's a gold mine if President Trump can get them registered, if Republicans across the country can do that. And getting low propensity but Trump-leaning voters to turn out, that seems essential in a race that could be very close.
I think we're going to have a turnout benefit. I think it's the Democrats are going to have a turnout problem because you look at the enthusiasm gap. If Joe Biden has a rally,
right,
and let's say a deep blue state like New York or California, is he going to get 25 or 30,000 people show up? Is he going to get 50,000 people to show up? No. I mean, I don't honestly even know if they could manufacture a crowd of 5,000. So I think they're going to have a turnout problem. Also, he's been in power for 4 years. And think about this, Vince. In the debate that they're going to have in a week or so, and then the second one they're going to have later on in the fall, President Trump can say, you don't have to believe the scare tactics and the fear-mongering of the media and the Democrats. I was president for 4 years. This guy has been president for 4 years. Who do you think did a better job on the border? Who do you think did a better job on the economy? Who do you think projected strength internationally?
Yes.
Who was respected and feared more? Who does China not want to be president? Me. And then he did make mention of Putin. They try to accuse me of Putin being Putin friendly. I put more sanctions on Putin than anyone else.
Yeah.
And I hope he also says, and I plan to visit with him on this, is to say, what new military adventure did Vladimir Putin embark on during the 4 years I was president? Nothing. It was nothing new. He kept him in check. He contained Putin. George W. Bush didn't, Obama didn't, and Joe Biden sure as hell didn't do it either. He was the only one to do so. And Putin even joked with him and said, oh, my God, if you're Russian friendly, I don't want to see if you're mad.
Yeah.
Because he told Putin, I want to be very clear to your listeners. He told Vladimir Putin, Vlad, and he told me this privately, and he mentioned it again this morning. You cannot invade Ukraine. It is unacceptable. Do not even consider it. And he told them, if you do, just so you know, I am going to do everything I can to unleash the American energy sector to keep oil depressed at $40 or $45 a barrel. So you won't even be able to fund your war. So don't do it. And you know what? Joe Biden has done the exact opposite. You know, he's throttled the American energy sector, and Putin can fund his war because gasoline costs more.
Right. And you're right about just the way voters are looking at these two men. They're both known quantities now. They've both been president of the United States. And every survey now that's backward looking keeps saying that people really liked their lives much better under Trump than they do under Biden. So that is the appropriate assessment, and that's the thing that seems to be powering Trump's campaign right now. Congressman, before I let you go, I want to ask you about Attorney General Merrick Garland. You were among the Republicans yesterday voting to hold him in contempt of Congress. Give us a sense of the gravity of that decision, and what do you make of this Justice Department saying, well, who cares? He's not going to be prosecuted anyway.
Right, because if you actually enforced it, it could carry stiff penalties like $100,000 in fines and a year in the pokey, a year in the jug, and this is where he belongs if he's going to defy Congress. All we're asking for, Vince, it's evidence. So the former president of the United States is being tried criminally for possessing documents that he had the authority to declassify. But the current president, who had classified documents that he had no business retaining, no business to be in possession of, and did not have the authority to declassify, he gets a pass. Okay, so we know why he got the pass, what have you. But there's evidence, and part of it was that the prosecutor found that he willfully retained and disclosed classified material. But he said, he's an old man and he's likable and he's well-meaning, so we don't think we could get a conviction, so we're not going to try it. Okay, so the guy's old, senile, and somewhat charming when he wants to be. But there was an interview done, and they gave us the transcript. Well, how about the actual tapes, the audio tapes? If the members of Congress, if a chairman of a committee wants that evidence, they need to hand it over. And he won't do it because you know how bad those tapes must be and how senile he must sound when he can't remember basic facts of his life. And it's one thing for me to tell you about it. It's quite another thing for you to hear it with your own ears.
Yeah, I bet. And the White House clearly knows that this is just a kill shot, and they don't want to release it. Thank you, Congressman Pat Fallon. Good to have you with us, sir, as always.
No, thanks, Vince. You know what all President Trump has to say? President Reagan line. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? If not, vote for me.
Yeah, I expect. Down in Georgia, big fat Fani Willis was once again complaining that she's the victim of everything. Speaking to a church yet again, here she is from the pulpit saying that if you call her Fanny, that you're obsessed with a woman's posterior.
See, I'm so tired of hearing these idiots call my name as Fanny in a way to attempt to humiliate me. Because like silly schoolboys, the name reminds them of a woman's rear.
Oh, so you're here to hear first, everyone. Fanny reminds you of a woman's rear. She certainly does. I don't know if it was a woman's rear, I was thinking. More of a horse's. By the way, I'm not the only one who calls her Fanny. Here's Maxine Waters this very week.
It's so important for us to fight for education, because when we do that, we can aspire to careers that will help change what goes on in this country and have a real democracy. I want to give you an example of it. Right now, as Trump is on trial, you have Letitia James in New York. Mm-hmm. You have Fani Willis in Georgia. And you have Tanya Chunkin, who is a judge, who all have a role to play now, prosecutors and judges. And if we're ever to change the criminal justice system and get some justice, we've got to be in there.
So apparently, I didn't realize this when I heard this clip earlier this week. Not only is that clip racist, it's also sexist. She's obsessed with a woman's rear, that Maxine Waters. Well, I'm glad we caught that. Thank you, Fanny. Or is it Fani? We'll work on it. It's 3:58.